you can look back at the offseason and be pretty positive at this time of year for like 26 or 27 teams. I feel like you can easily talk yourself into things are better this year than last year because we have these draft picks, we have these free agents, and everybody's going to get better. There's always a handful of teams where it feels like, I don't think they're better. The Cowboys are one of those teams. Are the Cowboys one of the teams that didn't actually get better? I'm sure there might be Cowboys fans who are like, good riddance with Amari Cooper and Connor Williams and his 18 penalties and all that stuff. But I would say those guys are good. And you're missing a couple good players there. You're missing a Randy Gregory. I mean, you're missing some players that were serious contributors. I think what made Dallas, because let's not forget, they were kind of like New England. Remember, New England I was talking about these games where they were really, really good and other games where they just couldn't do much offensively. Dallas had those games too. They had these games where they were so dominant offensively. And it's like, all right, go try to cover all of us, right? You can't even cover Dalton Schultz now because he's open because you're worried about all of our receivers. That's Dallas at their best. And I think they've lost a little bit of that without having Amari Cooper and having to just rely more on CeeDee Lamb and Michael Gallup. Gallup's probably not going to be ready early in the season, so that puts an even bigger damper on that receiving core. You're relying on rookie first-rounder Tyler Smith to replace Connor Williams. And you got to figure out the pass rush that you lose from Randy Gregory defensively.
Yeah, like you look at the rest of the league and you got a bunch of teams that can realistically expect their baseline to be better than it was a year ago. We upgraded in a bunch of spots and there's a various range of outcomes here, but the majority of the outcomes should be an upgrade over the previous season. Dallas, you look at their range of outcomes and you would say the best we can hope for is to stay where we were a year ago. The best we can hope for is that Jalen Tolbert can replace Amari Cooper, and when Michael Gallup gets back healthy, we're where we were last season in terms of wide receiver group. That's the best you can hope for. And expecting, we've seen a lot of success from rookie wide receivers, but Jalen Tolbert coming in and being Amari Cooper day one, that's a high bar to set. It's possible, and I really like Jalen Tolbert. I'm excited about the opportunity he'll get, particularly early in the year with Michael Gallup out. But that's a big ask. It is not going to be easy for Dallas to stay where they were a year ago.
Yeah, it's easy to also say, well, yeah, Mike, you have Micah Parsons, right? Be excited about Micah Parsons. We think DeMarcus Lawrence is really, really good. Wasn't as good last year as some previous seasons, but
and missed time injury. Like if he stays healthy,
we think DeMarcus Lawrence is really, really good, and that pairing with Micah Parsons is great. They're better when it's Randy Gregory in the mix as well, and then you have more flexibility. So some of their advantages from last year with depth at receiver, really few holes on the offensive line, depth at edge rusher, they just lose those for this year. I want to talk Dak for a minute because he had a weird season too, right? It's great that we have 6 years of data now, 5.5 years of Dak Prescott, right? And it was like a roller coaster ride early on, and it looked like he settled in as this, okay, maybe Dak's arrived as this top 10 quarterback, top 8 to 10 quarterback, getting paid as such. But he has the calf injury in week 6 against the Patriots, and his play tapered off. And I think it tapered off to kind of whatever Dak is, right? He finishes with an 83.5 passing grade. That's his best grade of his career. He's had a few years in the low 80s. It's fine. The turnover-worthy plays, though, just kind of came out of nowhere down the stretch. He had a game with 4, and he had 3 other games with 2, and a game with 3, which was against San Francisco in the playoffs. Dak just, other than, a couple games against Washington, they just straight dominated. Against Philly's backups, that shouldn't even count, week 18. Against some bad teams, Dak looked good, but he had some rough games down the stretch. And I don't think there's not like a clear reason why.
Well, I think there is. Ready for the analogy tracker, the little tally coming up?
Get it going.
Dak to me is a finely tuned race car engine, a motor, where those things run on weird fuels. They all have various custom-made components, and they're very fragile relative to like the engine that you have in the minivan, Steve. The minivan's engine should run for, hundreds of thousands of miles. You barely need to touch that thing, and it'll just keep on trucking because it's made out of like pig iron and idiot-proof components, right? Dak Prescott is made out of all these fancy carbon ceramic things, and the second one thing you screw up with the engine, it stops running right? And there's like a misfire, and it's just you're not getting 100% out of it. That's Dak Prescott, where the second one thing is off, it changes dramatically his output. Whether it's you take away a wide receiver, Amari Cooper's out of the lineup, you're not getting 100% of Dak Prescott. You're having a pretty big drop-off. All of a sudden, the dude's got a calf injury. Now we're getting 80% of Dak. We're not getting the full Dak Prescott experience. So I think what we've seen from the years of Dak Prescott data right now is that if you give him the 100%, the full race-tuned experience, you give him the fancy race fuel, you give him the carbon ceramic parts, you give him the high-end lubricants and belts and whatever else you put in these engines, you get a really high level of play from Dak Prescott. But the second you mess with one of those things, it's not the same, and it's a big difference. And that, I think he's maybe the most susceptible quarterback in the NFL to any kind of change in his environment.
You are a metaphoric genius.
Thank you. Yeah.
Wow.
Anyway,
I think you nailed it, though.
And look, the injury might not be there from last year, and who knows? Like, that could have just been a random freak thing. It could have been compensating from the injury that he had the year before, which can happen sometimes. Or he might get injured this year. But the big thing to me is you've taken away Amari Cooper from his offense. You've taken away one of his targets. And okay, you can talk about how that target may have been underperforming, but he isn't there anymore. That's a big thing now, because we know that Dak Prescott plays worse when you start screwing around with his wide receivers. So you've taken one of those away, and then you're hoping that the guys that are still there can perform at the same level and that he doesn't get injured.
The evidence is strong. Dak got better. The offense got better with Amari Cooper.
Yeah.
And we always talk about having three awesome receivers is a great way to win in the NFL, and I think that's a reason why the Dallas offense was so good. And I'm sure, again, there's probably some Cowboys fans saying, but Dak had 38 touchdowns and 11 interceptions. Like, you can't get much better than that. How do you do better than that? Because I think a lot of those numbers did come because even with Gallup hurt last year, the rest of the offense was very good. I think Kellen Moore as a play caller, maybe not specific situationally, but holistically, Kellen Moore got the most out of that offense. That's why he ranked higher in our offensive coordinator rankings. Not because he called a draw with the game on the line, not these specific one-off calls, but holistically, given what the offense had and what they produced a lot for a quarterback that had an 83 passing grade, which is good, not great.